I spent years getting better and better at meditation, and my life stayed exactly the same. That was the moment I realized something was off. Not in my discipline, and definitely not in my commitment. Something about what meditation was actually doing wasn't translating into how I was living. So for a long time, I generally thought meditation was supposed to calm you down. You sit, you breathe, your shoulders drop a bit, and your mind goes quiet. Maybe you float somewhere pleasant for a while. And what took me way too long to notice was that the calm stayed really on the cushion, and that was it. Which honestly means that a hot bath and a decent glass of wine deserves way more spiritual credit than it's getting. Now, that understanding stuck with me for years. I kept meditating, and I got better at it too. I could sit, settle, and access that familiar peaceful place without much effort. It showed up on cue. Then I'd stand up, step back into my life, and everything would run exactly the same as it did before. Same decisions, same reactions, same patterns, same subtle sense that I was never quite here. It was it was like my body was slightly ahead of life sometimes and slightly behind it other times, but rarely synchronized with what was actually happening now. Most people recognize this without having language for it. And you feel it when you're driving and your body arrives before your attention does. You feel it when you're eating and you're already planning the next thing. You feel it in conversations where you're listening just enough to respond, but not enough to actually be there. Life keeps happening, but you're meeting it half a step off. And that half step doesn't sound like much until you realize it compounds across an entire day, across years. It's exhausting because you're constantly spending energy trying to catch up to a moment you never fully entered. And that kind of timing mismatch sounds small until you realize it affects everything. So at some point, that disconnect stopped being subtle. The practice felt refined, but my life didn't. And that's an uncomfortable place to be because the practice looks perfect on paper. That's when I started to realize the issue wasn't effort or consistency. Meditation itself wasn't the problem. The way I was relating to it was. I was using meditation as a place to go instead of something to bring into life. Over time, meditation started to change shape for me. It stopped feeling like a contained activity and started revealing something about how I was meeting time itself, how often I was living slightly out of phase with my own life. And lucidity is the word that finally made that clear. And that surprised me because it was a word I misunderstood. I really didn't get what lucidity actually meant for a long time. See, lucidity isn't mystical in practice, it's precise. Awareness arrives fully into the body and stays synchronized with the moment the soul already occupies. I noticed this first through lucid dreaming. When a dream becomes lucid, you don't leave the dream, you enter it more fully. Colors begin to sharpen, textures gain weight, density, and vibrance. Choice comes back online. The dream responds because awareness is finally inside the experience. Waking life behaves exactly the same way. Lucidity shows up when awareness stops hovering ahead of life or lagging behind it and actually lands in the same moment as it's unfolding. So naturally, timing tightens, choices land a lot more clearly and cleanly, and life starts answering back. That's where coherence comes from. So the soul is already present. It's always now. The body is the part that drifts ahead, falls behind, or runs out of sync. And lucidity restores that alignment. You can feel this alignment physically when it happens. There's a settling that moves downward through the body. Breathing deepens without effort. Movements feel timed instead of rushed. Choices arrive cleanly instead of wobbling. It's not dramatic, but it's definitely very practical. And you stop leaking attention into what hasn't arrived yet. And you stop dragging residue from what's already passed. The body finally receives the moment the soul has been in all along. And that's why living slightly out of time feels exhausting. Because you're either bracing for what hasn't arrived yet or dragging residue from what's already passed. Either way, you're really not fully here. So meditation at some point stopped being about calming my nervous system and really started being about bringing more of myself into the body so I could actually meet it fully present in the now, meet life as it's happening. And that's where the power of love meditation comes in. So for me, meditation became the act of consciously bringing higher self, soul, guides, your higher spiritual intelligence into my body, into my heart space, and letting that presence inhabit my physical form in everyday events continuously. So for me, that meditation isn't about escaping anything. It's about invitation. I'm inviting more of who I am, soul, higher self, guides, higher spiritual intelligence, into the physical body, into the heart, into the nervous system, into the places that actually meet the world. And that direction matters because energy moves downward. Presence densifies. Life becomes something you're inside of instead of observing from a distance. And this made a big difference. And it wasn't just a conceptual difference, it was a literal shift that happened. And that shift became unmistakable during a meditation circle that I was a part of. It was in this meditation, the shaman had brought a horse into the circle. Everybody had paid, everyone was participating, everyone was meditating. I did what I always do. I went inward and did the power of love meditation. I brought my guides, my higher self, my soul, fully into my body and into my heart. And the entire time, the horse stood with its chin and nostrils resting on my third eye. It literally ignored everybody else in the circle. And it's kind of ironic because I actually have a massive fear of horses. And that fear didn't disappear. It stayed present in my body. But what's interesting is it didn't run the experience. It didn't pull me out and it didn't shut me down. See, I was lucid. There was a moment where I could feel my body wanting to pull away. The instinct was there, the fear was there. Yet at the same time, something deeper stayed. I brought more of myself into the body instead of leaving it. More presence, more grounding, more soul. And that choice changed the entire experience. The fear didn't vanish, but it stopped defining the moment. I could feel the horse, I could feel my body, I could feel the intensity, and still stay open. And that's when I understood that lucidity isn't comfort, it's capacity. I could feel the fear and stay fully present at the same time. I could appreciate the moment instead of surviving it. And that's what lucidity makes possible. And here's the part that matters. Horses don't respond to intention. They don't respond to performance or to what you want to happen. They respond to presence. They perceive coherence directly. They know when something's actually here and when it isn't. So that horse wasn't responding to my comfort. It wasn't responding to calm. It was responding to the fact that more of who I am was fully in my body. And for me, that was really positive confirmation. So lucidity doesn't require the absence of fear. It requires presence with fear. From there, the pattern becomes obvious. Meditation changes when it stops being about producing states and really starts being about how you live. It becomes about synchronizing your body with the moment your soul already inhabits. So life doesn't get quieter, but it gets richer. And this is where meditation stops being something you schedule and starts being something that you live. You bring more of yourself into the body while you're working, while you're driving, while you're cooking, while you're dancing, laughing, playing. Just ordinary moments gain depth because you're actually present for them. The universe responds differently when you're fully here. Conversations change, timing improves, opportunities arrive a lot more cleanly, and life starts meeting you back because you're no longer half absent from it. So work becomes more engaged, movement becomes more alive, play becomes more real, moments carry more weight because you're actually there for them. Meditation stops being something you do for 20 minutes a day, and it becomes how you bring your soul into your body while you're living all day. And that's when life meets you back. That's lucidity. And this is why meditation stopped being something separate from life for me. It became the way I live it. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And lucidity comes from bringing our soul, our higher self, our guides, our light bodies fully into the physical, into work, into driving, into cooking, into dancing, laughing, playing. When more of who you are is actually here, the universe responds very differently. Everything feels richer, more alive, more responsive because you're no longer half absent from your own experience. Meditation at that point isn't about stepping away from life. It's about finally being here for it. Thank you.